If you have ongoing exposure to controlling people, it's a virtual certainty that you're going to experience blurry boundaries, which is why I've created the extensive online course called This Is Me, Establishing Boundaries with the Controllers in Your Life. There's a link below that will give you all of the details, and I hope that you would find it therapeutic. It's not at all uncommon for people to ask me the question, hey, Dr. C, why do you focus so heavily on the topic of narcissism? And that's actually a very fair question. Way back when I began college, and that was many moons ago, I became a student of human nature, much broader than just various diagnoses. What is it that makes us struggle? What is it that can make us actually more whole and feel like we're in a maturation process? Those would be the kind of questions that I would be challenged with way back then, and I've been struggling and trying to come to terms with those kind of questions all the way through to today. When I talk about narcissism, basically I'm talking about human nature. There are certain ingredients that are on the inside of every single human being, no matter where on the globe you live. And if we can understand some of the universal truths that go into the making of human nature, and we can understand narcissism because that's such a core issue that all of us have to be aware of, and then we can springboard it and figure out what the much cleaner alternatives are. So that's why I look into this. And as we look at the whole topic of narcissism in particular, there are four universal truths that I have just continued to focus on since my early career and even till now. And I want to share those four principles with you so that we can learn how to move forward with our understanding intact. Now, the first universal truth that I hold to is the fact that each person is predisposed to be self-absorbed. Now, go back to your children or other children that you've known to your own early childhood, and you realize that there's a certain element of self-preservation that each person maintains. We want to make sure that we're nurtured and our basic needs are taken care of, but we also want to know that somebody out there cares for us and that we matter. There's a significance. And little children can have a, what are you doing for me kind of a mindset. And that's okay. In fact, it's quite necessary. But many times that sense of what are you going to do for me becomes so exaggerated. You know what it's like when a child just has this me, mine, no, don't tell me, give me what I want, those kind of things. And then they throw temper tantrums when they don't get it. Many people really don't grow too far beyond that basic instinct. They're so focused on taking care of oneself that ultimately that's the only thing that matters the most. And that's something that each one of us has to come to terms with. It's a universal truth. A second universal truth is every person nurses the desire to be in control. If we start life wondering, are you going to take care of me? Are you going to love me? Am I going to be significant? Then it only stands to reason that many individuals will think, well, what I need to do is take matters into my own hands. And so in doing so, we can turn our attentions towards, the demands and the requirements, the agenda that we have for other individuals. You didn't do this right for me. I don't like the way you handled that. And critical thinking can come into play. We realize that life is very much a competition where one person tries to one-up the other one. And so it's like, well, if I'm the one that's in control, if I'm the one that has the agenda, if I'm the one that makes up all the rules, then I can be okay. And so individuals in their need for control can become bossy. They can become very particular, being very demanding about how other people are supposed to be. Or they can kind of go in an opposite direction and say, well, nobody's going to tell me what to do. And so they can be very rebellious when somebody tries to put rules and regulations and agenda on them. It's a universal truth that we all have this craving to be in control, and it shows up in many, many ways. A third universal truth is every person is inclined to hide behind a false front. When you have this self-absorption, keep in mind there are another 7+ billion on the planet that also have self-absorption. When you want to be in control, just like all the other people on the planet want to be in control, you realize that there's a lot of non-safe kind of people out there because they're vying for their pet agendas. And so we wind up learning how to put on a false front. It's part of our self-preservation, but it can go way too far. I want you to think, have you ever had a moment where you felt like you had to be defensive? You had to cover up? And the answer is, of course you have. Every one of us does. It's a universal truth. Not any situation can be known as being fully ideal. We don't have full trust in anyone, frankly. We don't want to give 100% disclosure about who we are and what we think and how we feel, because it's like this might turn out to be something that's difficult. And so we tend to hide some things, and many times it can become pathological to the extent that you hide behind a false front because you don't want people to know what your real struggles are, your hurts, your insecurities, your confusion, or just simple little things like your preferences and beliefs and priorities, because there are all sorts of other people out there who are self-absorbed and controlling who are going to come down on you. The false front is a universal ingredient. And then a fourth universal truth that I've come to understand and appreciate is that every person can struggle with anger. Not a single individual on the face of the earth handles anger perfectly in all circumstances. Many times the anger can be very aggressive, and whether we're talking about on a one-on-one basis or one culture trying to be aggressive toward another culture, we can have an argumentative nature. We can be forceful, blaming, pushy, negative in the way that we manage anger. Sometimes we can become passive-aggressive, thinking, maybe sometimes the best way to win the anger war is to give the silent treatment or make yourself evasive and non-committal. That's passive-aggressiveness. Many people will hold on and suppress their anger, and it turns into contempt and disgust and bitterness. So those are four principles or four universal truths that I hold regarding human nature. Narcissists are stuck in those four elements that I just mentioned. We talk about narcissism as being very self-absorbed and entitled and manipulative and alternate reality. It's like, no, I'm holding on to these issues on the inside of myself, and they don't grow. Now, understanding and appreciating these four universal truths, we can actually become poised to find the better path. You hear me talk about TEAMHEALTHY. I want us to say, I, on a personal level, am capable of these issues that I just mentioned. We are capable of going into that direction. But is there a better way? Can we pick up on those four principles and come up with a much cleaner way of engagement with the world? Now, let's go back. We all have a tendency to be self-absorbed. The better path there is to learn empathy and humility, and the fact that we're interconnected with one another. And you can see that as we are able to engage with those kinds of ingredients, then we're going to have a much cleaner way of interacting with each other, and we can have better outcomes. Or that second universal principle, we all want to be in control. What if you and I decided, can we just drop this need to try to control one another and allow free choice to be there and to be available? I have this term that I call imperative thinking, must, have to, got to, should, supposed to, where we just have this strong mentality that says, get inside my mold. What if we said, I'd like to just know who you are, and I'd like for you to know who I am? Which then takes us to that third universal truth that we all have a false self. What if we decided, I don't want to be false. I want to be authentic. I want to learn. I want you to know who I am. Now, obviously, we have to have a certain amount of common sense with respect to who we're going to engage with and people who can manage that. But where possible, we want to have openness and we want to welcome input rather than defending against whatever it might be out there. And then also, instead of that universal truth saying we all struggle with anger, I wonder if you and I can decide, I want to be the kind of person that manages conflict well. I want to know the principles of assertiveness and I want to establish good boundaries, but I want to do it with decency leading the way, which is why I emphasize how Dr. C, DRC, stands for dignity, respect, and civility. Conflict is always going to be out there, but we can manage it in a healthy kind of way. So if you can understand these universal truths and you understand why I focus on narcissism, narcissism is a way for us to look inside the human condition so that we can figure out what needs to be adjusted and then we can do better. And there are certain key tenets that I hold on to as I have this deeper understanding of narcissism. First and foremost, I'm not going to let the narcissist set my pace. They don't get it. Understanding these principles, and by the way, there are many others that we could add to it, is what I'm all about. And I want to make sure that I set my pace. I want to make sure that I choose to think and that I can attach my insights to specific events and circumstances. And I can actually be somebody who represents the better alternative. So once you identify these 4 principles and then it leads to many other insights, I'm hoping it can prompt you to say, rather than going into their space with them, I'm going to pull back and go into my much better way of living. And my response is, well, the more of us that can do that, then the better off we're going to be. Team healthy. So why don't we just kind of close with this thought, and that is, I don't want us to just criticize narcissists and say, they're just terrible people. I want us to look at that and say, that represents what all of us could be. I want to be the better alternative. Want to join me in that? I hope the videos such as this give you some good things to think about. If you've not already done so, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button and we'll keep more coming to you. Hit the notification button that goes along with that. When you think about concepts and topics like this, sometimes it might propel the thought that says, I could use some therapy. And I'm hoping that you are going to be a lifelong learner. If you have a need for a therapist, we have a sponsor whose information is below. We have a link that will take you to a whole team of licensed professional therapists. I've received very good feedback since they've been sponsoring me. So if you have that need, then take advantage of it. In addition, I've put together courses, and these are extensive courses. They're not just, one-off kind of things, but there are multiple videos with written material that go with that, along with personal reflections questions, and it's part of me trying to walk you through a therapeutic process. And so we have links below to my videos. This is me, free to be, and then we have others that will be coming very soon. In addition, we have my books and other resources. I'm hoping that as we take a look at this topic of narcissism, we're not just doing so in a finger-pointing kind of way, but we're doing it in a way that says, I want to learn, I want to think, I want to understand, and I want to grow. When you can take that kind of approach, then that leads you or allows you to be poised to become a person of peace.